how does this whole idea of this 10% entrepreneur start? And can you tell us a bit more about that? Because it's a very interesting concept.
Yeah. So I was afraid, well, basically where I went from there is on the personal side, I was like, I've got to get healthy. I went on this total health regimen, lost 25 pounds.
Okay.
Went off and ran a marathon, sort of just took care of myself.
Did you keep working at
yes.
IAG at the time?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I couldn't.
Which is kind of hard, right?
Yeah, we didn't do so much back in the.
Right.
We were all waiting.
Showing up.
We were waiting to get sold, so we were put up for sale, and the sale took a year and a half, and nobody left. People, we would spend our hours of our days. We would do our work, of course, but we would spend hours a day behind closed doors complaining, wondering what was going to happen. It was a hard time, and I think there was so much uncertainty. Our bosses didn't know either, and this was something that played out all across Wall Street. So I was sort of dealing with this situation of stasis, and I think that not having momentum in your life, if you're used to having momentum, is really tough.
Yeah.
And so I was stuck in that environment, and so I focused on finding momentum, getting healthy again, doing all these sorts of things.
Which is good, because you were in a bad state there.
Yeah, and so after I did this trip to India, believe it or not, about 6 months after, and when I left for India, I was still Mr. Foggy Vision, and I came back 2 weeks later, and I could see. It was crazy. I think just getting out of New York, and then I stuck around, and I actually wanted to quit, and then I was too afraid, and I was just boring everybody I knew with how much I wanted to quit. And then I finally said that.
What is that, FOMO or FOBO?
That's just
what is that?
Fed up.
Okay. But you do want to stay. You want to stay and get that salary for the Wall Street life, and you don't want to go, and it's weird.
It's weird, and you can sit there and do the calculation that you have X number of years of rent in the bank, but you also don't know where you're going to be going. The minute you leave your job, it is then incumbent on you to actually figure out what the heck you're going to do, right?
The clock starts ticking.
Exactly, that clock starts ticking. And so what I did, I tried to quit 3 times finally. Every time I found some way to stay on, there was an offer made, and we were being sold, so there was not a lot of desire for me to leave, and it would look bad. And then finally I made a deal with my boss to leave in 2010, and I stayed on as a consultant. And so I gave myself this elegant bridge to go. And so then I took a year off, and I did what I call eat, pray, love. Right. Eat, drink, love, maybe, because I went to Spain and France. And then my brother, who's a jazz musician, told me, you should get up every day for 6 months not knowing what you're going to do, because you've been so programmed. And I was like, you're an absolute lunatic. And then I did it. And I have to say, it really broke me of a lot of my sort of just feelings of FOMO and FOBO, because I really tried to focus on what I was going to do that day. And so I did that for about a year, and then I got nervous.
How do you do that? So you don't make any plans?
Yeah.
And you just wake up the day, and then you do whatever you want to do?
Yeah.
And you don't have plans the next day or the next day or the
next day?
next day?
You may have general plans, but it's not like you pack your day with 15... Right. I found myself...
And from a control freak, type A, HBS grad, that's a hard thing.
Yeah, because you're interviewing for jobs you don't even want. I remember going to these jobs, and I was like, this would be terrible. But you're in the 3rd round because you're sort of like, well, I should do this, right? Because, I should be trying to get a job. But I knew I had given myself a period of time to do something else. And so I had to learn how to let myself actually not be on the treadmill for a bit.
Okay, and this is after your eat, pray, drink year.
This is during.
During, okay.
During,
and how did you allow yourself to actually do that and just step away and just go to Europe and relax?
Well, knowing that I still was a consultant and I had a paycheck coming in.
Okay.
Not as much as I made, but knowing I had some income coming in was really critical. And that's a big lesson, is when you're living out of your savings, nothing feels good, right? Okay. It just, even if you've got 25 years of savings in the bank, every time you spend money, you're sort of like, should I do this? Should I buy this flat white? Like, oh, it's £3. It's a lot of money. Knowing you have money come in mitigates that. I think it's more of a mental challenge than anything else.
Okay.
And then I started thinking about what I was going to do next, and that's where this 10% concept came in, because I didn't want to be a full-time entrepreneur, and so I built a sort of a consulting practice, which is you're working for yourself, but you have clients, and so you're really just like, in a sense, a freelancer, as it were, right? Yeah. And I had enough, and that was bringing in enough money to pay the bills. But having been a venture capitalist, I knew there's a concept called carried interest. Carried interest is when you're a VC, you get your salary, right? But then you own a share of every investment that you make. So if you invest in Uber and it makes tons of money, you get part of those profits. And I knew that when you're a consultant, you never share in the upside of anything you ever do.
Right, because you're just getting paid by the hour, paid handsomely by the hour.
Right.
but you can work for 20 companies, and if one of them goes to be $1 billion, you might get invited to the Christmas party.
Exactly. You get, they start sending you like the T-shirt with the logo on it,
okay,
or whatever.
Because you had a background in venture cap, you're like, I'm wasting opportunities here to own part of the company.
Exactly, and also, the real money is made in any business by being an owner. The minute you become an owner, if you take 2 days off, or you go on holiday, or you're sleeping, your value in your company, the part that you own, still grows because your colleagues and the people who work with you are building the value of that company, and you are part of that, right? And so you become part of something that's bigger than yourself. And that's what I wanted. I realized, having watched all these people as entrepreneurs make all this money, that unless you're an owner, you can never be part of that. And so then I decided, how can I do this in a way that diversifies me, that allows me to still have a day job, because I couldn't afford to quit and do that full time. And so I came up with this concept of 10%. I started watching friends around me who were way smarter than me, who were investing in companies as an angel investor, who were becoming an advisor where they traded their time for stock in a company, who were starting things. And I watched them and I thought to myself, like, this is a really smart idea.
Yeah, it's fascinating too, because like you meet them in London, and then you meet someone and they're like, oh yeah, I'm an angel investor, I've been in 10 companies, I'm an advisor. And you meet the next guy and he's not. And it's like they're both qualified, they both have the time, they probably both even have the spare income, but one of them kind of gets it and one doesn't. It's weird.
Yeah.
I guess you saw that.
Well, that's what I saw, and so I decided I'm going to take. And the 10% thing comes from the fact that my best friend Jason and I were walking down the street, and we were talking about another friend of ours who was doing this. And so I said, I'm going to take part of my savings, and I'm just going to put it aside in almost like a little family office. Rich people have what's called a family office to invest their money. I'm going to do my version of a family office, and then I'm going to take 10% of my time, and it's like a tithe. And he was like, that sounds like, he then cited a guy named Steve Siegel, who's a very successful real estate exec. He's like, that's what Steve does. It's 10%-ish. And that's how he's like, that's where you make the real money. So I decided to do that. And then I later found out that the average angel investor puts 10% of their real assets into deals.
Really?
So the market clears at 10%.
Market clears. For people who know what that means, that's what the market tells you it is.
This is what you did. This is your kind of terminology.
As opposed to the speculation. So interesting, 10%, because I would have thought it'd be more. Because I'm thinking, I was calculating the days in my head. Say you don't work weekends, you probably work a little bit on the weekends, but that's a half a day.
Sure. That's
not much time, you would think, to be able to advise companies, et cetera, et cetera. But I guess there's different ways of doing this, right?
Yeah, so it depends on who you are. So if you're a person, for example, that builds websites or that designs logos, or that maybe you're a carpenter even and you build out the headquarters of a company for stock, and that happens all the time.
Right, or you're the graffiti guy
at
Facebook,
David Cho,
right?
Exactly. I mean, that's different. That may be that's more project based. Okay. But a lot of what I do with companies is I give them an hour of time a month, or maybe 2 hours of time. Okay. They give me between half a point and a point of equity vesting, I get that over a year and a half or 2 years.
Okay.
But an hour, if you're a startup that's brand new in your space and you're looking to meet investors, I don't need 30 hours to tell you, call these 3 people, they're my friends, I'm going to recommend you, go have a meeting, right? It's not time consuming per se. It's about, using and leveraging all the skills and relationships you've built over your career to be impactful in, concentrated amounts of time.
Right.
That's really the story on the advisor part for many people.
Okay.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, learn from the best minds in the world, and connect with a community of passionate people building the best versions of themselves. Just click on the link below, and I'll see you on the inside.